The amphitheater on the moon of Kiral V was shaped like a wound in the white regolith, carved by precision lasers and lined with silver alloy. Above it hung a translucent dome, revealing a galaxy of stars that stretched endlessly into the void. Delegates from dozens of galactic empires sat in concentric circles, whispering in 100 tongues as the Terran envoy stepped into the center of the arena. Ambassador Lena Voss, dressed in a crisp black suit bearing no military insignia, felt every stare. Behind her, 2 human aides followed in silence, datapads glowing dimly against the artificial moonlight. They were dwarfed by the towering forms of the ZKTH warlords, the segmented bodies of the Solari Hive diplomats, and the fluid, glimmering robes of the Veil Ascendancy. The translation units hummed as a booming voice echoed across the chamber. Terrence, your request to participate in defense deliberations has been noted. But many in this council question, what contribution can a species offer when it is known across the stars as pacifist and cowardly? Scattered murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lena didn't flinch. She had been briefed on the cultural framing, the expectation of dominance through posturing, the ceremonial mockery. It was part of the game. She stepped forward. Earth is not here to posture, she said, voice calm and crisp. We're here to participate. Another voice, this time from a crimson-skinned noble of the Ithri Imperium, rose with mock gentleness. You've sent diplomats to a defense summit. Where are your warriors, human? Or are you still hiding behind old Earth policies, those relics of moral restraint? Chuckles followed, dark and dismissive. We are selective, Lena replied with a bare smile. We fight when it's worth fighting for. And when we fight, we end wars. A new voice cut through the noise, heavier, more severe, the Akar commander of the Galactic Security Bloc. His serpentine features twisted in disdain. You refused to commit forces during the Nebulan Rebellion. You did not respond to the Zarthian trade raids. You speak of selective engagement, but we see avoidance. We see fear. Lena allowed the silence to linger a moment longer than comfortable. Then perhaps you'll welcome this opportunity to reassess. Before any could speak, a shrill alert tone echoed across the chamber. Lights dimmed, hollow displays flickered, and a floating drone zipped into the arena center. Its image flickered to life, a transmission from deep space, unencrypted. Lena recognized the markings immediately. Pirate raiders, branded with the seal of the fractured Corval Syndicate, a rogue faction recently expelled from the Council. The footage showed a hijacked diplomatic freighter drifting through a debris field. A message followed. To the Empires, your unity is a lie. We take your envoys to prove it. Pay in weapons or watch them bleed. Gasps rose. A counselor from the Thren coalition leapt up. They've captured our envoys. That was the Corellian peace convoy. The veiled diplomat's voice turned icy. We demand immediate joint retaliation. The Akar commander turned sharply to Lena. What now, Terran? Will you send your... What is the word? Strongly worded condemnation? Perhaps a protest vote? The laughter was harsher this time, tinged with real tension. Lena's fingers hovered briefly above the transmitter at her hip, then pressed it twice. Earth will take responsibility for this operation, she said, voice level. By the time this council reconvenes tomorrow, your people will be safe. A moment of silence passed. Then, derisive laughter. A diplomat from the Rekthal leaned back, his many arms spread mockingly. With what? Your negotiators? Your democracy? Lena tilted her head, her voice soft. We're activating Protocol Phantom. That phrase silenced the chamber. It wasn't in their shared linguistic index. A few scrolled through databases. Nothing. The Akar commander narrowed his eyes. What is that? Another Terran's speech? Lena's eyes locked on his. You'll see. Across the moon, deep beneath the amphitheater in a classified facility shielded from galactic scans, a light blinked red. Inside a reinforced hangar carved into the stone, men and women stood up in perfect synchronization. They wore matte black armor with no markings. Their visors glowed faint blue. At their feet, cybernetic canines stood alert, tails motionless, eyes burning red. Overhead, stealth drones hummed silently into launch tubes. Their commander, callsign Spectre 1, read the mission data as it scrolled across his retinal HUD. Pirate stronghold, outer ring of the ether rift. Multiple hostages, high-value alien diplomats. Hostile force estimate, 200 plus, with anti-air capabilities and energy shielding. Full discretion authorized. He smiled beneath his helmet. No press, no politics, just ghosts and bad dreams. The team moved with fluid precision. Dropships disengaged from their ceiling clamps and descended into the vacuum. No engine trails, no heat signature. They vanished into the black. Back in the amphitheater, debates raged. Some council members demanded transparency. Others called for sanctions. The Solari Hive delegate pulsed nervously, multiple eyes blinking. What is this protocol, Phantom? Is it a weapon? A strike fleet? Lena sat quietly, hands folded. No. The Akar commander stood, voice rising. Then what have you sent? Her voice was almost a whisper. Something older than your councils. Something we keep in the dark until we absolutely need it. He stared at her, disbelief etched across his features. You sent shadows? No, she said. We sent the American Boogeymen. The chamber erupted. Confusion, anger, mockery, dozens of voices clashing in translation. The phrase translated poorly across alien dialects. Some interpreted it as a metaphor, others as a rogue faction. The idea of Earth deploying military force outside council oversight sparked outrage. Lena sat still, weathering the storm. Only one voice didn't join the fray. A silent figure in the back row, Ambassador Katol of the ancient Valari hegemony. He watched Lena carefully, expression unreadable. The transmission feed from the freighter flickered once more. New footage, blurry, infrared shots of black-armored figures moving through smoke-filled corridors. Silent takedowns. Dogs emerging from shadows. No screams, only a distant, garbled whisper picked up from the pirates' own comms. They're here. They're here. In the silence that followed, Lena stood. Tomorrow, when your people return home safe, you will understand. We were never cowards. We were just patient. As she turned and walked from the amphitheater, the debate faded behind her. Outside, on the moon's barren surface, a ripple of wind stirred the dust as something unseen streaked silently toward the stars. Voodoo checked his surgical kit, not for treating wounds, but for extracting information. Between them, a cybernetic hound named Ghost lay curled, its red eyes scanning the cabin, pupils contracting with each flicker of movement. They had no ranks in the traditional sense. Names didn't matter. These are the ones Earth had erased from records, trained in zero-light environments, broken and rebuilt beneath Antarctica, off the grid, off the books. The American Boogeymen. Spectre 1 stood near the forward viewport, watching the pirate stronghold come into focus. A jagged asteroid ringed in metallic scaffolding, half alive with flickering lights and sporadic weapons fire. The readings showed hundreds of life signs. Inside that rock were the hostages, several alien diplomats, including at least one counselor from the Veil Ascendancy. The Syndicate had chosen their target well. They expected negotiations, maybe a token fleet response. They did not expect them. Deployment in 90 seconds, said Whisper, the pilot. Her voice came through the neural uplink, not spoken aloud. Every member received the same signal in their heads, synced across their combat networks. It felt like instinct more than instruction. Spectre 1 activated the mission subroutines. Each soldier's HUD updated with infiltration vectors, enemy placements, structural weaknesses. There was no formal plan, just objectives and freedom. That was the method. They moved like smoke, adjusting faster than any enemy could process. Ghost in first, Spectre 1 said. Then Wraith and Reaper on the northern channel. Voodoo, you're with me. Quiet. Clean. They nodded once. That was enough. The bay doors opened without a hiss. The boogeymen launched into the void like shadows spilling from a broken mirror. No thruster trails. No calm chatter. Just a seamless descent through debris and artificial gravity fields. Inside the stronghold, two pirates argued near a cargo lift. One, a stocky Drasheen with reptilian skin, scratched nervously at a shoulder wound. They said no response for at least 72 hours. Council's slow. We got time. The other grunted. Still don't like it. Something feels wrong. He never saw the canine approach. Ghost moved like liquid shadow. No sound. No thermal profile. A split-second flash of teeth, then silence. Both bodies dropped without a struggle. A drone zipped overhead, injecting a pulse into the security relay. Lights flickered. Cameras looped. And then, from the shadows, came the humans. Wraith glided down the corridor first, almost invisible except for the faint shimmer when he moved through high-density fog. His rifle never lifted above waist height. He fired on instinct, 2 quick bursts. Guards slumped. Reaper followed, planting EM mines on key junction points, then disappeared again, as if the metal itself swallowed him. On the upper tier, Voodoo worked with precision. They found the first cell block tucked beneath a reactor chamber. 8 hostages, 4 Solari, 2 Rekthal, 1 Veil, and a trembling Thran adolescent. Voodoo scanned each for neural implants, biometric traps. None activated. Yet. Time, he asked. 15 minutes to window, Spectre 1 answered. No margin. They began extraction, one body at a time, slipping sedation patches onto each alien's neck. Sleep was safer. Panicking diplomats made noise. Elsewhere, the pirate command center was chaos. The footage wasn't making sense. Guards disappeared. Entire sectors went dark. When feeds returned, they showed only flickering glimpses. A figure moving unnaturally fast, a glowing-eyed animal prowling through steel corridors, a door opening without any breach. One clip caught a clearer image. Black armor, reflective like water, with no insignia. And on the wall behind him, hastily spray-painted in red by unknown hands, a single phrase, "They're not myths." The pirate leader, Kravik, slammed his claw into the console. This isn't possible. The Terrans don't fight. They hide behind rules. This is a trick. An underling, pale and shaking, offered a datapad. Intercepted transmission. It's looping through our own system. I think they're doing it on purpose. You played the audio. A human voice, distorted and low, whispered a phrase in English. We're already inside. The command staff froze. One reached for a sidearm. It was too late. A concussive charge breached the ceiling. For boogeymen dropped in, moved as one. There were no demands. No announcements. Only finality. Minutes later, Spectre 1 stood over Kravik's body. He didn't gloat. He simply took the datapad and uploaded a secure signal back to Earth's diplomatic AI node. Mission status. Objective secured. Hostages recovered. Minimal casualties. Extraction team. Converge at egress vector, he said. Voodoo acknowledged. Reaper's bringing in the final group. The Veil's awake. She's talking. Spectre frowned. Manage her. No witnesses, not yet. But the Veil counselor was lucid. She stared through the visor at the man who carried her. Reaper, her silvery eyes wide with something that wasn't fear. I thought your kind didn't believe in vengeance. He didn't reply, but his silence said enough. As they moved through the corridors, the pirate bodies stacked like discarded armor. She whispered to herself in her own tongue. A prayer, or maybe a warning. Something ancient and instinctive. Above the asteroid, the Phantom-class dropship reappeared, its optical camouflage shimmering as it decloaked for docking. The boogeymen loaded the sedated hostages and moved wordlessly into position. Spectre 1 watched the stars beyond the viewport, then triggered the detonation code. Explosions rippled through the stronghold. EM pulses fried surviving systems. The base wouldn't be salvageable. No technology would fall into the wrong hands. No trace of Earth's methods would remain. Back on Kirill V, the amphitheater was quieter now. The latest feed played in stunned silence, an edited transmission deliberately sent by Earth's encrypted diplomatic channel. It showed blurry footage, ghost-like figures eliminating pirates, hostages unharmed, the Earth flag faintly visible in the background, rippling from a drop patch on one operative shoulder. The Solari ambassador stared, mandibles twitching. They weren't supposed to do this. This wasn't protocol. The Yakar commander remained frozen, jaw tight. Ambassador Katol of the Valari hegemony, silent until now, finally spoke. They were called cowards because they didn't move when we taunted them. We thought they had no fire. Lena Voss didn't speak. She let the moment stretch. Katol turned his gaze to her. But now I wonder, did they choose to be underestimated? Her only reply was a slow blink. The feed ended. The screen went dark. Somewhere deep in orbit, a Phantom-class ship coasted in a black space, its crew already preparing for sleep. No debrief, no celebration, no records, just silence, and a galaxy that had learned, far too late, that Earth had never needed an army. They had something far worse. The stronghold burned behind them. On the outer shell of the asteroid, melting steel and fractured stone glowed orange against the void. The Boogeymen didn't look back. Inside the Phantom-class dropship, Reaper sat near the rear hatch, helmet still on, visor dark. His fingers tapped the side of his rifle with a rhythm that suggested something like thought. Across from him, Voodoo was already cataloging biometric data, marking subtle physiological patterns from the hostages, silent signatures of trauma. Even when you save people, some part of them stayed broken. He never tried to fix it. He just documented the shape of the damage. Spectre 1 stood by the forward viewport again, arms crossed, unreadable. He hadn't removed his helmet either, though the others had begun to. He wasn't hiding his face. He simply didn't see the need. The mission wasn't over until the message had landed. "Status?" he asked. Whisper's voice came through the comm, this time with a hint of tension. 2 unknown vessels entering fringe proximity. Not pirate. No weapons primed. Transponder codes match galactic security block. Spectre didn't move. "They're early. They're watching," Reaper muttered. That was expected. The Council wouldn't ignore what had just happened, especially not after Earth's deliberate broadcast. But the timing was suspicious. Too soon. Someone had prepared for this. He turned to the others. "Hold position. No engagement. Let them see." Below deck, Wraith moved among the sleeping hostages, checking vitals, monitoring neural dampeners. The veiled diplomat, Counselor Saria, remained semi-conscious. She stirred as he adjusted her oxygen feed, and for a moment, her hand reached for his visor. "Why?" she whispered. Wraith paused. "Because you asked for cowards," he said, and Earth sent an answer. She tried to speak again, but her strength faded. He left her there, unconscious but safe. The approaching ships loomed larger on the display. They weren't war vessels, but they were armored. Observation cruisers, each outfitted with high-resolution scan arrays and long-range data transmitters. Spectre 1 watched as their sensors began active sweeps of the dropship signature. They wouldn't find much. His team's tech was ghost-coded, invisible to standard galactic architecture. But this wasn't about discovery. It was about perception. Earth wasn't hiding anymore. Spectre opened a direct comm line. "This is Spectre 1 of Phantom Unit. Operation concluded. Hostages secure. Enemy eliminated." There was a pause, and then a voice replied, sharper than expected. "This is Commander Tarek of the GSB. You conducted an unsanctioned rescue on foreign territory. Explain yourselves." "No." Another pause. "No." Spectre's voice was even. We don't explain to people who let hostages bleed while they bicker over jurisdiction. You're not authorized. Then stop us. Silence. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, the projection feed trembled slightly as the tension from the relay hung over the delegation. Dozens of envoys watched as Spectre's last words echoed through the room. Lena Voss remained seated, impassive. You see now, she said, not to anyone in particular. They only come out when it matters. When others hesitate. Kotal spoke again, voice low. And what happens when they come out too often? When fear becomes your only currency. Lena turned her eyes toward him. Then we lose ourselves. That's why they don't stay. That's why we lock them away. Back in the Phantom-class ship, Reaper moved toward the armory alcove, peeling off his gloves. His hands were covered in faint scars, some healed with tech, some not. He stared at them for a long time. Ghost padded over and sat by his feet. The red glow of its eyes dimmed to a quiet pulse. Reaper reached down and scratched the underside of its reinforced jaw. It nuzzled him with something approximating affection. We used to believe in rules, Reaper said aloud. Voodoo looked up. We still do. They just don't. Them. The galaxy. These empires. They call us cowards because we hesitate. Because we think before we shoot. Because we still ask what a soul costs. Reaper exhaled through his nose, quiet and cold. And when we stop asking, Voodoo didn't answer. Spectre 1 watched them both, then turned his attention back to the cruisers now retreating. A signal blinked on the comm. Encrypted, Terran origin, level black. He read the first line of the directive. Confirm asset integrity. Proceed to Red Sky Protocol. He didn't like it. Whisper. Plot course to Kirill V. We're landing at the Council Summit. Whisper hesitated. You want to walk in there? We didn't just send a message. We need them to hear it in person. Reaper stood. You sure they'll listen? Spectre's voice was quiet. They don't have to. They just have to remember. Within an hour, the Phantom-class ship breached Kirill V's orbital defenses under diplomatic override. By the time they landed on the moon's surface, the Council amphitheater was already in uproar. Lena stood as the ramp hissed open and the boogeymen emerged, flanked by dogs, unarmed but armored. The chamber fell silent, not out of protocol, but out of something closer to awe or dread. Reaper's visor was still down. He scanned the chamber, pausing briefly as his gaze swept past the Solari ambassador. The alien flinched involuntarily. Memories had long shadows. Spectre stepped forward and stood beside Lena. He faced the council. We operated under Terran discretion to recover your people, he said. They're safe. They're sleeping. The Rekthal envoy narrowed his eyes. You're soldiers without oversight. Assassins with a flag. You think that earns respect? No, Spectre replied. We don't need your respect. We only need you to understand. He stepped closer. We heard you. All those years you mocked us. You called us cowards. Weak. Soft. You never asked what happened to the predators we used to be. The Akar commander tried to interrupt. This is a council forum, not a battlefield. Spectre looked at him. Then why does your pulse spike when I speak? The room held its breath. We didn't come to fight you, he continued. We came to remind you. Earth doesn't seek conquest. We don't need empire. But if you bring war to our doorstep, if you take our people, if you insult us enough times. He removed his helmet. Reaper did the same. Voodoo followed. 3 human faces stared out across the assembly. Tired, scarred, and utterly calm. Then Earth doesn't send diplomats. Ghost growled low beside them. We send nightmares. He let the words hang, then turned and walked out. No one stopped him. No one spoke. Behind them, Lena addressed the council with her usual calm. She submitted no demands. No resolutions. Only a summary of the rescue and a declaration of closure. Earth had fulfilled its promise. The hostages would be returned before the solar cycle ended. No terms. No broadcasted glory. Just results. After the chamber emptied, Kotal remained seated. He stared at the spot where Spectre had stood, silent for a long time. Then, to no one, he murmured, You made your point, Terrans. The galaxy will remember. And far above, in the cold dark where no light reached, a second Phantom-class dropship began to awaken. Another signal. Another hunt. Because Earth had many ghosts, and they were listening. The sky over Montana was pale and wide, stretching endlessly above the wind-worn pines. The cabin sat quiet near the edge of a forgotten road, its structure unassuming, weathered wood, unpainted porch, an old flag tucked into a holder that hadn't been touched in years. Birds moved through the trees. Snow lingered in the shadows. Inside, a fire crackled. Reaper moved without sound, boots soft against the floorboards. He lit the stove, checked the perimeter, then poured a cup of black coffee and stood by the window. No one had followed. He made sure of that. No satellites above, no drones, no surveillance. Not even from Earth. Especially not from Earth. He wasn't hiding, just resting. The war was over. At least this one. His visor sat on the table, cracked along the edge. He hadn't bothered to replace it. When a knock came, he didn't flinch. He opened the door to find Spectre standing in the snow. No helmet, no gear, just a jacket zipped up against the cold and that same unreadable face. Behind him, a cyber dog padded silently, its eyes dim and passive. Reaper stepped aside without a word. Spectre nodded once, stepped in, and took the offered cup without asking. They stood for a moment, shoulder to shoulder, watching the trees sway. "They're calling for formal recognition," Spectre said eventually. "Council wants a declaration of Earth's new defensive posture. Strategic alignment protocols. Security guarantees." Reaper sipped. "That means what? Treaties? And oversight." Spectre set the cup down. "They want to know who we are. All of us. Names. Training logs. Deployment history." Reaper's smile was thin and without humor. "So they're afraid now." "No. Worse." Spectre turned. "They're curious." Outside, the dog growled low. It wasn't alarmed, just listening. Some habits didn't fade. "They'll dress it up as diplomacy," Spectre said. "But they want leverage. And if they can't get it, they'll start hunting shadows. Try to create their own version of us. Something they can control." Reaper finished his cup. "They'll fail. They might not." They stood in silence, the fire between them hissing gently. "Voodoo's off-grid," Reaper said. "Last I heard, he went east. Bought a cabin near the Black Sea, teaching himself to paint." Spectre allowed a flicker of surprise to pass over his face. "You? Right here?" Spectre looked around. "You always said you'd come back. Didn't think it would feel this empty. It's not meant to feel full." Reaper gestured to the worn sofa, the walls still bare, the quiet absence of anything resembling home. "You think the galaxy believes it now?" he asked. "They do. Then why do I feel like we just started something worse?" Spectre didn't answer. He didn't have to. Back on Kirill V, Lena Voss stood in the Earth diplomatic chamber. Larger now, upgraded after the vote to elevate Earth to a Tier 1 defense partner. That had taken less than a week. The Council had debated for hours, but the footage, blurry, silent, undeniable, had done the convincing. Fear worked faster than reason. She listened as new envoys pitched proposals. Share intelligence networks, joint training exercises, cross-cultural psychological studies. Every species wanted to understand how Earth had created them. Those black-armored wraiths who stepped from myth into brutal reality. Lena responded with carefully measured language, enough to pacify, but not reveal. She never said the word boogeymen again, but others did. In a veiled children's program, animated villains now wore black armor and carried silent weapons. Parents used their names as threats. "Clean your quarters, or the Earth ghosts will come." Across the Solari hives, religious texts were updated, inserting Earth into prophecy. Some saw them as saviors, others as punishment. Katol, the elder ambassador, stood before the Council one final time before stepping down. His speech was short. "We did not fear the humans because they were weak. We feared them because they made us forget that strength, when hidden, becomes legend. And legends, they do not negotiate. When he left, he refused interviews. He returned to his homeworld and disappeared into private life. The galaxy kept spinning, but not everything returned to normal. In the shadows of a decommissioned mining station on the edge of VA space, a whisper spread. Merchants reported strange disappearances. A gang of slavers who specialize in high-value targets had vanished without trace. Cargo still intact, no damage to their ship, no signs of struggle. Just a message burned into the bulkhead. We remember. The Galactic Security Block launched an investigation, but none of the cameras worked. No audio, no traces. The legends began again. At Earth's highest security level, deep below an oceanic military archive, a man in a gray suit reviewed the latest psychological index submitted by the Council's cultural advisors. The report was concise. The presence of the Boogeymen has altered interspecies behavior. Hostility toward Earth factions has dropped by 72%. Diplomatic concessions granted in 31 separate treaties. He marked the file as read. Then he opened a separate folder labeled Phantom, redacted. Inside, stills from Spectre 1's mission, partial voice logs, behavioral heat maps, civilian response models. One phrase highlighted in red. Do not deploy again unless prepared for war. He closed the file. In Montana, the sky began to darken. Spectre stood to leave. He set the empty cup down and looked once more at his old teammate. There's another storm coming. There always is. You staying out of it? Reaper nodded. Unless someone takes a shot at the dogs. Spectre almost smiled. On the edge of the forest, Ghost perked up, sniffed the wind, then laid back down. The shadows lengthened. The quiet settled. Reaper watched the trees and wondered what kind of galaxy his children would inherit, if he ever had any. Would they grow up with stories of monsters in the dark? Or with stories of Earth silence? The kind that came just before the storm? He didn't know, but he knew what they would never forget. That when the Empires called Earth cowardly, Earth didn't roar. It whispered, and in that whisper came something worse than wrath. It came with purpose, with precision. And it came wearing the face of men who had nothing left to prove. Somewhere else, in a sealed bunker beneath Luna's southern pole, red lights blinked to life. Old names surfaced in black font rosters. Protocols updated. Contingency plans refined. Not because Earth was planning another strike, but because someone out there had just started asking the wrong questions again. And Earth knew how to answer.